Hello, and welcome to another episode of Conscious Business Connections, brought to you by the New York City chapter of Conscious Capitalism. My name is Joe Laranjeiro, and I'm joined today by Scott Harris, broker and director of the residential team at Brown Harris Stevens. Scott, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Joe. It's fun to be here.
Good, good. As I was looking into your history a little bit, I saw that you're a UPenn grad. You had degrees in history, psychology, and art, which is pretty impressive to have three degrees from a major university. What did you want to do coming out of school, and how did you end up in New York City real estate?
Yeah, I've taken I would say, kind of a Renaissance man approach to everything I've done. I was a singer in high school, into college, and did a bunch of music. And the history and the psychology kind of flowed together in the sense I got really, really interested in urban planning. So in the midst of college, I was studying the history of the development of Philadelphia and a lot of things that happened during Eisenhower's presidency. And then the music kind of came together in a way. I was running this very entrepreneurial, like a band, as I was living it, got very entrepreneurial. So I was always interested in kind of people first. Everything I've ever done, sales, the study of history, psychology, was all kind of focused around what people do and how people live. And when I came out, I thought I might be a history teacher, thought I might be a football coach. I played high school football down in New Orleans, and kind of thought about marrying those two. I ended up moving to Boston and getting involved in the entertainment business. And then when I finally moved to New York, after a bunch of years of touring as a musician, all of this history stuff and all the architecture stuff I always loved kind of came back to life for me. And someone suggested I get into real estate. So it really did feel like coming home in some way. It always just felt very natural, helping people find a place. But I floated like a lot of people do until I was about 20, 28, where I really landed and said, this is just what I love it. I really have loved it for so long.
Real quick, what kind of music were you involved in?
It was imagine in the late 90s, like boy band kind of stuff. It was very pop. We had a blast. I was in my early 20s touring the country and doing a lot of just having a ball on stage. But it was like a kind of between the a cappella world that you see today, and a boy band.
Yeah, if you have any pictures of you in a boy band outfit, I think we would love to share that.
I'll be sure to point out that social media was not popular until COVID. Thank God.
That's hilarious. But thank you for sharing.
Of course.
As we go back a little bit further in your life, what aspects of how you grew up have really impacted how you view real estate and how you approach that today?
Well, I would say, my dad, growing up, sitting around the kitchen table, he's a commercial landlord. So he was always talking about tenants and just kind of nuts and bolts. I was never that interested in the commercial side. What I was interested in, and certainly being from New Orleans, I was interested in architecture. I mean, it's probably the richest, oldest architecture other than maybe Boston, where I did live for 5 or 6 years. And I was just fascinated by what I was looking at in the French Quarter. My best friend lived in the French Quarter, and my parents split up when I was really young, and I was always going back and forth between my mom's house and my dad's house. And what I realized as I got into real estate was how satisfying it was to be able to help people find a home, to find until I was probably almost 28, 30 years old, did I ever have one place where I was really living. And so, finding people a home is like I find it to be like a sacred mission, to be able to find a place where people can make roots. They come to New York to do something, and like the home is an expression of who they are at that time that they can use as this foundation to really, live their most fully expressed life. To me, it's a real higher calling.
It really is. And I guess in order to do that, you really get to know people on a deep level, right? You inquire with them. It's about knowing their history, what makes them tick, their aspirations, their dreams. Seems to me that you really bond with them in a profound way in order to fulfill that for them.
It does. I would say the curiosity for me, I really want to, who are you? What are you about? I mean, I just want to learn about you and what kind of business you're in and where did you come from and what makes you who you are. I would say part of the value add and what kind of makes me a little different. I'm just asking questions to learn about you and your business. I just bring people together all the time, constantly like, oh, you should talk to so-and-so. Do you know so-and-so? It's an extension. My business is just an extension of who I am. Like I want to connect people. And then in that conversation, then you do start to learn who they are. And in doing that, yeah, I mean, you start to get kind of an intuitive sense of what might work for them. And then I can go out and, as far as buyers go, really go out and when I'm looking around, I have that lens I can look through and say, oh, that might work really well for you. And then and that really does, I do get to know people pretty deeply. Maybe in that conversation, they get to know themselves a little more deeply because they can't always articulate what they want.
Sure. So you probably have examples where folks come to you saying through words that they want this, this, and that. But when you look at deeper drivers and motivations, you tend to maybe shift them around a bit as to what they're really in need of.
Well, the conversation I try to have is like, let's dream a little bit. Like, let's talk about like it's like almost thinking about themselves in the future where they're going to be in this place that makes them very happy, and kind of getting into that excited place where like I'm sitting at the coffee table talking, my kids are running by, or I'm having this, they express that what I call the Thanksgiving fantasy, where they have everyone at home and like what that looks like. You can see people get lit up. And when they're in that headset, they do tend to be a little more open and expressive about what they really want. And so it's not about, oh, you can't have this because your budget is this, and oh, the rates. And that's a very like contracted conversation. Instead, like, let's expand it. People, you probably wouldn't be surprised to learn that people spend more than they set out to spend. Because lo and behold, like they find this thing that really does express them, who they are, and then they want to spend. They find the resources to spend what they wanted to make that happen. Because that's going to be a more true expression of where they are in their lives.
Yeah, when you do the work on yourself and you get into that emotional state, you get better return on your investment, even if it is above the budget you planned on spending.
Yeah, I've seen it for myself.
Sure.
I mean, when I was my first apartment, I thought I was going to spend here, and I think I spent, well, at that time it was small dollars, but probably twice what I expected to spend. Maybe I just had a bad expectation of what the original budget would be.
Yeah, I think a lot of us fall into that dream state sometimes, and I guess reality has to creep in at some point. So New York City is obviously there's a lot of brokers. I think 30,000 was a number that we had discussed. So there's a lot of jostling for business and for listings. How do you view the market, and how do you feel about the competition versus the collaboration aspect of it?
I mean, it may be surprising to say I don't really look at the brokerage community as competitors. I mean, yes, I could go down and tell you some stories about bad behavior, of course, and I don't win every pitch, and I lose buyers and have made plenty of mistakes and whatever. But what I would say is in terms of working with the brokerage community, we're forming relationships over a long period of time. These are people I'm going to see time and time again on this deal and this deal and this deal. And like, you can't burn. I think you have to just be super professional. I'm always wanting to elevate the conversation about how do we create a good reputation in the marketplace to the brokerage community. If they believe in the property I'm marketing, they're going to help their buyer believe in the property I'm representing. And I also think that just in making all of us more professional, it elevates the experience, because I would say brokers, as we call them in New York, like don't always have the best reputation. Like we're maybe a couple steps above like the meter maid and the tow truck driver. I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like it's not a well-regarded profession. So I hold myself to my own standards, and I feel like there's so much business to go around where there's billions and billions of dollars of sales in a year. My firm does $9 billion of sales if you count in Brown, Harris, Stevens, and Halstead, which have now merged officially last year, 2019. So there's plenty of business to do. So my feeling is like, if we can elevate the brokerage community, make the experience better for everyone, employ more professional tools and cutting edge technology, it's going to be a win. And sellers and buyers are going to have a better experience. And frankly, it's going to sort of eliminate, the more invisible the tech is, then it comes back to just people.
So in conscious capitalism and corporate social responsibility, it tends to lend itself a lot to traditional companies, right? Technology companies, manufacturers, retailers, professional firms of all sorts. And I am in this quite heavily and deeply, and real estate firms aren't anything I really read about usually when it comes to instilling a lot of these practices. I'm sure they do. I just don't you really see a lot of it in the marketplace. But you guys are organizations with teams and cultures. You have people that to develop and take care of and look after, and well-being to worry about. You have a purpose, like we've talked about before. You have stakeholder, like we just talked about now. But when it comes to internal operations and leading teams, for you, what are some of like the leadership principles that guide how you are a leader in the workplace?
I would answer it in this way, Joe. First, as a sort of a structural way that real estate firms operate, there's usually an umbrella company, and then we each operate almost as independent contractors, as teams. So it's a very different headset. All the talent, the value of the company generally, as my president Holwoki says, he's like, all the talent's going up and down the elevator. All the value, that meaning that it's all people. And we have a new CEO as of like 2 or 3 years ago, Bess Friedman, who's incredible and is running Brown Harris Stevens in a way that does treat it more like a traditional corporation, where there's a lot more trying to get we have a culture as a company, but does break into smaller subsets. And to the extent that, especially during COVID, to have much more engagement with teams, like we have town hall meetings in a way that we didn't, because Zoom is so easy to bring everyone together. That I think she is thinking about it in a way that how do you really sort of spread the ideas of how to really hold yourself to a higher standard. And I mean, one of the reasons I've been at this firm for over 13 years is because we're just totally top in class in terms of the way we handle ourselves. Every broker at the firm is just, they're just a solid level of integrity to what is being done at Brown Harris. And that's one of the I really professionally enjoy being around my colleagues. And then internally, as a team, the way we're talking about what I do, what my team does as visionary brokerage. That's how we label what we do. It involves a lot of listening, as we were talking about, really engaging with our clients and doing that deep discovery about, what would really make them happy and what would be a good expression of who they are, and then using that as a template to really to envision and find their home. But it requires getting on board, everybody rowing in the same direction. So we're doing like daily stand-up calls for the team where we really know what each other is up to. So we have this foundation of trust. And then as we're going about our business, we can really understand like what's going on with the business, how are we running it? And then people can pipe in with their different ideas about, well, I just saw this property. There's a clearing for actual communication where we can do more business because we're constantly discussing kind of what our values are on a regular basis and living them. It's not just talk about visionary brokerage. It's like actually talking about that envisioning process with clients and even daily emails that I'm sending out. So it requires a real dedication to walking your talk, I guess is the easiest way to put it.
Yeah, that's really well said. So you mentioned integrity, I heard in there, trust, I heard in there, transparency with keeping people involved, up to date, informed through these daily interactions. Any other values that you'd like to highlight?
What I would say, Joe, is that there's an accountability to the way we run our business. I mean, I listen to a lot of podcasts that will interview kind of business coaches and how they run their business. And what I seem to find is that there's a way to be loving and firm at the same time that creates like direct communication. That being kind and caring about the people that work for you and that you work with does not mean letting things slide. And I don't think people understand that. And so it's not this top down. It's really like, how do we work together? And so one of the things I would say we like really stick by is this idea of being on time for meetings. Like that's the most basic thing that people let slide. Oh, he's 5 minutes late, this, that, the other. In a Zoom world, you don't have people walking downstairs to the meeting. I'm not reminding people about the meeting, but what I am telling people is I value your time. I respect you and your time. And the second somebody starts to be late, that sends a subtle signal that my time is more important than yours. And I have to hold myself to that. I can't be, so if people are late, it's some people say like it's sort of, you have to explain it at the beginning, but let me tell you, after a short time of being on a team, people are not late. And that just makes for, let's have the conversation about what we came here to do, get it done, and go on with our day. And it's a powerful, there's no gunk in the system. So I find that to be like a really simple example of like one thing a team, someone can do. And then there's just that clearing to have a conversation about whatever actual business problems are there. And people aren't sitting there going, well, this guy's late all the time. What's that about? No distractions.
Yeah, sometimes the perception of a conscious business or a conscious business approach is that can be a free-for-all. People can do what they want when they want, right? But no, like there is a structure, and really there are rules of the game that are defined by values. And if a value is on time, right, it's being very prudent with scheduling. I think as long as everyone is brought up in that environment and people have a say in how the values are being created, then those are the values that the company's going to operate by. And I think that's a great example you just mentioned. I hear a lot about that as well from podcasts and so forth around just, be this no matter what. And then things could fall apart very easily if you don't have additional rules to keep others in balance.
You have to be willing to take it. Like if you don't live up to those things, you have to be willing to have your team call you out on it too.
Correct.
And own it.
It's a two-way conversation.
Right. I mean, it's not you have to be vulnerable to that. You've got to be willing to take the feedback if you're going to give it.
Correct.
So,
yeah, that's really well said.
But you also have to hire people. You have to make sure they know, hey, this is what you're getting into. You're getting in this boat. We're all paddling in that direction. So like, here's your oar. This is the oar. And so in a sales organization where you might have, like all the different sales types, people that they don't want to be micromanaged. I mean, who wants to be micromanaged? I mean, but it's like, this is why we're doing this. If you can really clarify what it is, and it's not just stuff for stuff's sake, then people get it. And if they feel and know you care about them, they're going to work hard because I want them to succeed. I really do. I mean, I can't run my business effectively unless everybody's doing their thing, whether they're only working with buyers or they're really running operations or they're working on our sale listings. It's whatever it is. That's the approach, is just to know your role, grow professionally, have your own goals. I want to support their goals of what they want to earn, what they want to achieve, so that they can look back in a year and go, oh my God, I can't believe where I am. Like I never would have thought that was possible.
It's great insight. Thank you for sharing with our audience, Scott. In a couple of minutes we have left, I'm just curious myself, the audience probably is as well, especially our local community. COVID in New York real estate, I mean, all the headlines I read is moving trucks are sold out, you can't get them, people are moving out, the city's falling apart, companies are leaving, closing down shop. I mean, you're on the ground with this every day. What do you see?
We were able to reopen the real estate market for showings June 22nd. So we've seen the market open since then. So call it 4 months, basically. And there was a lull. And certainly even today, the market is still opening up. But we're starting to see, I would consider to be green shoots. Buyers are finally getting into the market, and rates are below 3% for qualified buyers, which is pretty much all of our buyers are very successful qualified people. So there's certainly the corporate environment, everything is going to take some time to get back into Midtown and everything else. But I would say we're kind of at peak pandemic noise right now, and we're starting to see people like being able to hold their head up and go, wait a minute, it's time to really take a look at the value that's in the real estate market. And certainly, I'm not very Pollyanna-ish about this. I think people have to be thoughtful, but they also have to get educated and make bids, probably below asking, to find out which sellers are real. And so it's, I say you gotta kiss a few frogs right now to get to that prince. And I would say we tend to focus on like what we can do, like activity wise, what we can actually do to move the market forward rather than getting caught up in the everyday kind of common hour kind of discussions about COVID.
Cool. Well, thank you for the insight. I was curious. I mean, I live in New Jersey, so I'm not that close to New York City real estate, but
Sure.
sometimes the headlines can be exaggerated, as we tend to figure out.
Right.
Well, Scott, thank you so much for joining us today and for being a great example of conscious business principles and informing our audience a bit about the real estate market and the internal workings of a brokerage. I was certainly very curious. I think others will be as well, and glad to see that it can run with the same conscious capitalism approach that other what people associate more traditional professional services would operate under. Before we let you go, can you let us know how we can learn more about you and Brown Harris Stevens?
Sure. So if they if they just Google Brown Harris Stevens, they're going to find the website. But if they Google Scott Harris, Brown Harris Stevens, they'll find me. They can go to harrisresidential.com. They can follow me on Instagram at Harris Residential Team. They can follow me on Twitter at Harris Resi Team. But if they just go to harrisresidential.com, they'll find all the resources. They can find videos about my market updates. They can sign up for a monthly newsletter. And I talk about New York in general as well, just all the things that it means to be a New Yorker. So we think of ourselves as whole people, whole humans interacting with other whole humans. So we want to engage with our clients and vendors and people who refer us business, as a whole, and see how we can help people move themselves forward.
Great. And you're on LinkedIn too, right?
Oh yeah, they just look up Scott Harris, Brown Harris. They can find me there.
Great. Well, thanks again, Scott. I also want to thank our sponsors, the Core Club, as well as the Tom Young Foundation, who make our programs possible. Thank you guys for joining us for Conscious Business Connections. Hope to see you on a future episode sometime again soon.